Now, table number 4 provides information on the status of company-owned outlets. Talk to me about that.
Many franchise concepts also run company units. Some have large amounts and many have mostly small amounts of company units. Typically they do that for the reason of being able to test and check items before they become the next practices and put them into the franchise units. And other companies, large companies like McDonald's, run company units to also augment their profitability.
How many is a percentage? I mean, how many company-owned stores is kind of average, or is there any sort of average there?
There really is no basis to average them. It really depends on the industry, and it depends on the size and scope of the franchisor.
Okay, so table number 5 is talking about the projected new franchised outlets. What does that mean?
Now, in franchising, as a franchisor, we refer to that as the crystal ball. For some yet to be known reason, the FTC believes that we can project the number of units that we're going to award in the next year. Never been able to quite figure out how we do that, but they ask us to do it. They believe that a prospective franchisee needs to have some sense for what that franchisor expects to award in licenses for the following year.
The one thing about federal documents and things that are involve regulation is it's nice in some areas because it's kind of like having a referee. But the other thing is, like I know in small business, sometimes you have to take a salary that's considered fair and reasonable. And you know, like Steve Jobs took a salary of $1 a year, and then he just took dividends and that kind of thing. So and some people take a huge salary. And in the world of franchising, you're trying to make a guess here, but you don't really know. I mean, you might think you have a bunch of people that said, I'm going to buy one, but until the check clears, they might not buy one. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that, would you? I
don't really put too much stock in, but more importantly, it really is, it's difficult to predict where franchisees will come from because they want us to predict it by state.
Wow.
Actually where they're going to come from. And it's also hard to predict because we really don't know which franchisees are going to qualify that we will award them a license.
I predict strong growth in South Dakota. That's my prediction. So, okay. Now we're moving on to item number 21. Lightning round item number 21, and we're going to dedicate this one to Deion Sanders. All right, so here we go. Financial statements. This section includes balance sheets covering the past 2 years and income statements for the past 3 years. These financial statements must be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. What are we talking about?
Well, here's where we get to the fact that you can depend on those information to be audited financial statements. We're required to provide our audited financial statements for the past 3 years. And we're also required in some states to provide the current balance sheet for the interim statement for the year. That's rare, but it happens.
Now let's talk about this for a second. Audited financial statements. Are those free?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that cost some money to do that, to audit your financials?
Yeah, it's a very expensive proposition. It's the highest level of validation into your financials that you can provide in any way, shape, or form in the world of accounting.
And I just want to make sure, if you're watching this, again, if you're kind of that conspiracy theorist, you're a little bit of a skeptic, and you're going, what am I really paying for here? Well, let me tell you something. I've seen some of the legal bills associated with franchising, and they are nasty. I mean, nasty unless you're an attorney who's getting paid that. Maybe you're excited. But, I mean, it's expensive. Yeah. And the auditing is expensive. Those accounting bills are huge. I mean, this is part of the expense of opening a franchise.
Absolutely, and maintaining it.
Let me ask you this. It's a broad question, but maybe you can just bring a little clarity. Let's say that I have a snow cone stand, and it is selling the heck out of some snow cones. And I'm going, I want to franchise this. I mean, I have one that's on fire. How much would it cost me to franchise it, so to speak, or to make it so that it's ready to where I could franchise it?
That's a great question. There's a lot of variables. It would depend on how thoroughly you'd want to do that before you started to launch and test franchising. But anywhere is a minimal amount for a non-retail environment. Could be as little as $150,000 just to be able to start to offer, or as high as $300,000.
As little as $150,000. For the low price of $150,000, you could franchise your snow cone stand, or for as much as $300,000. And then on the annual basis, every state that I want to sell a franchise in, I've got to have audited financials and got to have my, right? I mean, all this, I have to be per state, right, under certain compliance?
There are registration states, which there are about 13 or 14 of, and then the rest of the states just accept the uniform aspect of the FDD. But in those states where there's registration, they also require you to pay them a fee every year to do
Little
that.
fun factoid. The great state of California, I believe, is
That would be
unbelievably expensive
Exactly.
to sell a franchise in, right?
Right.
So you might tack on a few more $1,000s to be open in California.
It's called a uniform fee, so we don't charge more in California than we do anywhere else.
Okay, so you wouldn't charge more there, but maybe there's more regulation in California?
There definitely is more regulations.
So these are just fun factoids. So again, if you're thinking about, well, what am I paying for when I buy a franchise? This is the stuff that you're paying for. So here we go. Moving on to lightning round item number 22. I'm going to dedicate this to Will the Thrill Clark, former San Francisco Giant from 1989. He hit 333 in 1989. I know that because I was obsessed with him for a long time. So here we go. Item number 22, contracts. The franchisor will attach a copy of agreements proposed for use or in use in your state regarding the offering of a franchise, including the franchise agreement, sample leases, and options and purchase agreements. Contracts, what are we talking about?
Well, basically, you're going to enter into this license agreement. The FDD to this point is just outlining all the things that you'd want to know, but it's not really the license agreement. So you're going to have an exhibit that shows the actual license agreement with the blank still blank, meaning your name's not in it, the state that you're going to operate in it, so that you know exactly what that license agreement says from beginning to end. Plus any associated agreements. If you are required to sign a lease of some type with the franchisor, they'll have an example of that.
I want to give an example of this. Like if you go into a Subway, they all pretty much look the same. And they all have pretty similar lease agreements, and they have pretty similar build outs in every area, every nuance, similar menus, similar almost as in like the same. And these are the kinds of things that you're going to find here, right? I mean, it's going to lay out the kind of agreements you should expect.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's no surprises. There's nothing that you're going to not be aware of. You know, and so you can say later, I wish I didn't know that I had to sign this, this document, or I needed to be prepared to accept this kind of a lease term.